Good morning. I'm Lauren LaFlamme, and welcome to our webinar on the essential skills of leadership. Presenting today is Jamie Hasty from SESCO Management Consultants, and we've partnered with SESCO for many years. Since 1945, SESCO has provided human resources and employee relations consulting services across the country. If you're a client of ours, we recommend that you take advantage of your access to SESCO. Each client is eligible for phone and email support from SESCO at our cost, and you can ask your insurance advisor how to get connected with SESCO. A few housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded, and I'll share the recording with everyone at the end once the session concludes. Please feel free to submit your questions in the chat as they come to mind, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. With that, I'll turn it over to Jamie Hasty, Vice President of SESCO Management Consultants.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and it's great to be back. Today, we're going to be talking about the essential skills of leadership. Some good content here. As Lauren said, this session is being recorded. I will make sure that you get a copy of the PowerPoint slides as well. So when we talk about leadership, there needs to be a distinction between a manager and a leader. Because all too often within our organizations, we are wearing both hats, sometimes at the same time, but leadership is more about the soft skill. Leadership is more about relationship, giving to others, building that trust, building that relationship, that respect, where our team members are choosing to follow us. They trust us, they respect us, they understand the path in which we are moving forward, and they are making a conscious effort to follow our lead. And that takes a lot of time and energy and mentorship and soft skill to develop that relationship. But as I said, there's a huge difference between being a manager, which we always have to do, right? We have policy, we have procedure, we have things where we have to make tough decisions, but leadership really is the reason in which your employees commit to you, commit to the organization, buy into the things that we are asking them to do. And it has to be a reciprocal relationship. Oftentimes, when we hold leadership positions, when you talk with those individual leaders within an organization, within a nonprofit or a community group that you may be serving with or, supporting in a leadership role, when you talk to those individuals, they're gaining just as much back from their team in terms of knowledge, skill, growth, development, all of these things, just as much as they are giving to the people that they are overseeing as well. So Coos and Posner always say that leadership is a reciprocal relationship between those who choose to lead. Because remember, it is a choice. Not everybody wants to be a leader. That is okay. There are people that are natural born leaders based off a personality style, but those who choose to lead and those who choose to follow. And in order for individuals to want to lead and follow, it all boils down to relationships, soft skill. And you will hear me talk a lot about relationship as the foundation of pretty much everything that we do, both in human resources and leadership and even management. So managers are often promoted from within for a variety of reasons. They are all too often very, very skilled in the technical aspect of the job. And this is where it gets tricky. So we often will promote managers into a leadership role, but they may or may not have the developed competencies or the skill set on the soft side of things, the leadership side of things. Not that they're not capable, they just may not have developed those things yet. So one of the most important aspects, whether you are talking about an older generation worker or a brand new Gen Z worker, is everybody needs growth and development. More importantly, our managers within our organization can make or break the success. And so when we put somebody in a managerial role and we are not providing them with the training, the development, and the support to gain those competencies, we're almost setting that manager up for failure, right? So in order to be a true leader, we've got to look at a few things. You have to develop or demonstrate both leadership and management skills when required. Again, two different hats here, right? When I'm functioning out of my manager hat, we're looking at policy, procedure, quality control, attendance, all of these things. Whereas the leadership side, I'm getting to know my people, what drives them, what's important to them, how do I connect with them, how do I gain that buy-in, how do I provide mentorship to them, and how is that all weaved into the day-to-day when we've got to get things done, right? It's about productivity. It's about serving our customers or providing that client that product or that service, right? So they've got to understand when and where to wear the individual hats as well as the collective hat. Um, communication. Communication is the number one issue in every organization. Why? Because we all communicate in a way that makes sense for ourselves, that makes sense for our personality style, right? And if you have not done a DISC personality profile assessment, it's one of the assessments that both I'm certified in here at SESCO, but we utilize in so many areas. And one of the biggest things that helps us when we are developing communication styles or working through conflict resolution or leadership or team building, all of these things, the foundation of that is DISC, DISC, because it also helps me identify what my unique approach is to communication, to conflict, to how I respond in certain situations when I'm under stress or I'm motivated, all of these things, right? But we have to communicate in a way that inspires others to act. I said this the other day when I was talking with a client group out of the Midwest, and I said, look, everybody wants to know what's in it for me, right? So when we take that same concept, our communication should always be structured from a leadership approach to give them the why. What's in it for them? Why do they care? Why should they care? What is the important information to know so that I'm tying it into their personality style, which is going to also tie into their motivation style and will inspire them to act. When I am communicating only in a way as a leader that works for me, I'm missing out on that connection that is so critical for not just communication, but getting them to buy into what I need them to do. A great leader will always develop the competency of encouragement, right? A great leader is always thinking about succession plan. Okay, heaven forbid something happened to me tomorrow. Who is my next in line? Who have I grown up with in the organization? Who have I identified that maybe they haven't identified this in themselves yet alone? But I see the skill set, I see the abilities. We should always be encouraging team members to assume leadership roles, especially if they have that skill and ability, right? Even if they don't have a formal leader title, they don't have to be a foreman or a lead or a supervisor or patient service rep number 3 in order to be a leader within the organization. Often, sometimes the best leaders are the informal leaders, right? Because they have that skill, that connection, that energy that people just latch on to and they want to follow, right? So those are the people we should also be keeping our eyes on and growing them, right? A good leader is going to provide support by following when team members assume that leadership. Listen, a manager and a leader both know that there will be things within their career, that their current role, that they may not be the best person suited to tackle that question, tackle that situation. They may not have experience in that. Maybe there is something else that I lack in terms of technical competency that a younger or less seasoned individual within my department or my organization knows how to do. I'm going to let them do it. Why? Because as a leader, I recognize that I don't have all the answers. I'm have other people beside me, above me, below me in terms of organizational structure that can do it just as well, if not better than me at some times. A good leader is going to support that. And they're going to let that team member take that lead, which helps grow and develop and, fosters that relationship. Last but not least, a leader needs to develop a vision competency. You'll hear me talk here in just a minute about the line of sight of the organization, but that vision is so, so critical. Here's where we're at, here's where we're headed, and here's why it's important. So let's dig into the nature of the organization. When I say the nature of the organization, I don't just mean our mission and our values. Those things are obviously incredibly critical, right? I mean, why does the organization exist outside of the obvious reasons of providing a good or service, making a profit? When I do leadership training, especially in person, I always pose the question to the group, why does your organization exist? And it is not uncommon for people to sit there in silence for many minutes pondering on that question. Because I say, don't give me the answer of to provide a good or service, to, make money. Those things are obvious. We know those. But what makes our organization unique? Is it about education within the industry? Is it about growth within the industry? Is it about community involvement? Is it about giving back, education? All of these things, right, that are critical and speak to why your organization exists outside of the obvious reasons. So when we are building the vision, when we are sharing the vision of the organization, the nature of your organization should also be part of that conversation. When we talk about recruitment and retention, okay, the number one reason why employees still leave an organization is because of leadership. It is not pay and benefits. I don't care about that in this post-COVID world. You can look at 50 different nationwide surveys right now in real time, and they will still tell you the number one reason why employees are leaving organizations is the leadership. So that tells us we have got to tie in more soft skill, more vision, more relationship, more nature of the organization into start to finish of that employee's experience with our organization. Why? Because if we want to retain the individuals we have invested in or worked very hard to get, because recruitment is difficult these days, they've got to understand why we exist, what their role is in that mission, that vision, that value. Because all too often, especially for an organization with multiple departments or multiple locations, right? We all too often operate in our own silos. I'm only thinking about my department, my job, without really realizing that my action or inaction as an employee or as a leader within the organization is dependent upon other departments, other people. So we have a team, right? Regardless of the department team, that entire team is only going to be successful if everybody understands the nature of our organization. And that is a critical aspect and the line of sight that a leader holds and a responsibility that the leader holds in sharing that information. Now, again, we also have to look at the role of a supervisor or a leader within your organization. Some, again, are going to be solely functioning out of that manager hat. Well, great. That's going to work from a numbers perspective. That will work from possibly a compliance perspective, but that will not always work from a commitment perspective, right? So there has to be good role clarifications within your organization, not just the technical side, but also the soft side. And then last but not least, our role as a leader is to help others achieve results. Okay. We're all in this together. There is, as funny as this may sound, there is no I in team, right? as a leader, I am only as good as the people underneath me, right? And so what we want to instill within our leaders is that title holds no bearing. Relationship holds the bearing, right? If we have leaders within our organization that are utilizing a title as a power play, then we don't have a good line of sight into our goals, our objectives, and leadership, right? Because just just simply because we hold a title doesn't mean that people are going to respect us, doesn't mean that people are going to choose to follow us, right? So we don't want to misuse that title. All right, let's talk about goal and action management. There are a few things that a leader has to do, obviously, and this is more out of the manager hat, but we have goals, we have actions that need to be taken. We have to ensure that we are being efficient in orientation. A good leader is not going to just simply, toss you out into the department and say, okay, sink or swim. A leader is doing daily checkpoints, weekly checkpoints, 30, 60, 90 day. And this is not just from the HR side of things. This is building relationship with that new employee. And so it has to be efficient. Relationship is everything. A good leader is going to be proactive. Okay. I'm not just going to sit around and wait for people to come to me and let me know that there's a problem. I should be eyes and ears to the ground. I should be anticipating, I should be observing and watching behaviors and watching dynamics and watching the workflow and the efficiencies and the productivity, because those are important to hitting our goals and our actions, right? But I've got to be proactive in that. If I see an employee struggling, my job as a leader is to step in and touch base and say, hey, help me understand what's going on. How can I better assist you? How can I support you so that we are hitting these goals? Because that shows that I have a concern with impact. Okay. Every decision that we make as a leader will have an impact, good or bad. Sometimes it might be neutral, right? But a leader is constantly thinking about those impacts and anticipating how do we navigate around that impact. A good leader also needs to be decisive. It was an interesting study that was done about a year ago where it was talking about qualities of a leader. And one of the lower ranked qualities was when a leader or supervisor does not demonstrate decisiveness. It calls into question employees being able to trust, understand, respect, or support that leader if they are constantly flip-flopping or seemingly unable to make a decision. Then employees lose confidence in that leader. So that doesn't mean you're going to have all the answers as a leader. None of us do, right? And excuse me. And conditions change, outcomes change, variable factors change at the drop of a hat. But once we make a decision, we need to move forward with that decision. And more importantly, if it ends up having a negative impact or it is not the outcome that we as a leader were anticipating, owning that decision and saying, yeah, I had higher hopes that we were going to have a positive outcome, or I didn't anticipate this other factor, which, created a negative impact. However, I still stand by, making the decision because I did so with the best information that I did at the time, and being transparent with your employees. That's really critical for leadership. They don't expect you to be perfect. They expect you to be honest and transparent. All right, let's talk about functional and organizational leadership. One of the big things is obviously going to be development of others. Training and development within your organization, regardless of size, is incredibly critical, especially for the younger generation. Okay. Maybe we don't have a robust org structure. Maybe we're a small business. That's okay. So, how do we keep our employees engaged? How do we develop them? Well, you develop them personally, you develop them professionally, you provide cross training, you provide skills and resources or mentorship. That is really, really important. But I will tell you, all 5 generations right now, and I'm talking about, your X's, your millennials, your Z's, um, 4 generations. There's still some baby boomers in the workforce, nearing retirement, but even the Gen Alphas, these kids are hitting 16, 17, 18 years old, and they're entering the workforce as well. There has to be a way to develop them personally as well as professionally. And that is something that is incredibly important for functional and organizational leadership. Having the resources, even if it is informal training or cross training, the younger generation, your Gen Zs, your Gen Alphas, are so heavily focused on growth and development. Okay, that's going to be something that, in order to recruit, retain, is going to be critical to implement as well. Group management skills, right? I have to be able to manage the group. This goes back to relationship. This goes back to getting to know your people. This goes back to understanding your leadership tendencies through DISC personality profile, as well as understanding the tendencies of the group. You likely will have a majority of certain personality styles because that is typical. Um, Statistically speaking, we hire people like ourselves. If you have been building your team, you naturally will connect better with somebody that has a similar personality style. So then what happens when we get a team of 10 of many versions of myself? That can be great, but that can also lead to management skill set deficiencies, and or gaps in skill sets. So we have to be able to manage those groups and build our teams where we're kind of supporting different styles. You should have functional marketing, leading each other through that vision. I think it's really, really critical for a leader to share as much information within relevancy that they can, right? You're going to have those employees that want to know everything, even though they don't need to know everything. So sometimes as a leader, we struggle with what information do we push down and what do we hold to ourselves, right? So having a good communication strategy in order to identify the appropriate channels and lead through that vision is going to be critical. Employees have to understand where we are headed and why their action or inaction is important to lead us through that vision. And more importantly, we have to have integrity. Okay. You will make mistakes as a leader. You will have successes as a leader. You will have failures as a leader. But more importantly, are we doing so with integrity? Are we making sure that we are always being professional and kind and supportive, even if we don't agree? Are we ensuring that if there is a decision made from the top and I have to share that decision with the team and I may not personally agree with that decision, that I am choosing to, share that information with integrity and not undercut and say, well, I don't really like the choice. I don't really like the decision, but we're just going to have to do it and we're going to have to suck it up, right? That's not leading with integrity. Leading with integrity is once a decision is made, regardless of our personal thoughts or feelings on it, we're supportive of the rest of the leadership in the organization. We are going to foster that collaboration, that respect, and gain everybody, get them on board. And we do that with integrity. Which kind of leads me into influence management. This is really, really important. I think sometimes as managers and leaders, we forget the type and the volume of influence that we have within the organization and within our teams, right? So in order to have a good influence management style, I have to be objective. Okay. In order to do that, I always try to focus on facts versus opinions. Okay. Why? Because facts are neutral. Okay. Um, In order for me to be objective, I often use two key phrases. And I think they're really critical, whether this is performance management, whether this is, working through a conflict, whether this is trying to learn and grow. And that first phrase is help me understand, right? Help me understand what's going on here. Help me understand the bigger picture. Help me understand where we fell short, whatever it may be. And the second one is tell me more. Tell me more about this so that I can see it objectively. Tell me about the players. Tell me more about the decision process behind how we got here, right? Because when I have more information and I'm being respectful and I'm exercising active listening, which is critical for influence management, it helps me remain objective. It's not about my personal goals, right? Remember, let's go back to the line of sight of the organization. We're all in it together. I can't be successful in my department if other departments are not being successful as well, right? So we want to remain objective. Then I have to build my network, not just within my department or my team, within other folks within the organization. Why? Because in order to gain influence, in order to build trust and respect, I have to network. I have to talk to other people that I may not work with on a day-to-day basis. That's okay. You build that relationship. We're fostering a coalition here because it helps make everyone's jobs easier. Hone in on those communication skills. If you have not done communications leadership training, it's really, really important. If you haven't done a DISC personality profile, that's also really important for communication. You have to understand what your natural tendencies are and then be able to cultivate and massage those communication skills. And it is a labor of love, right? Active listening, demonstrating that I want to be here, which means putting away the distractions, good eye contact, watching your body language, listening to understand, not listening to respond. Okay. That's how I gain influence. When employees feel like their voices have been heard, regardless of the outcome, they may not like the answer, but if they have been heard and we're following up, we are closing the gap of communication, we are communicating respectfully and thoroughly for the situation, they're going to buy in. They're going to buy into you as a leader. They will. Also, leadership is about negotiation, right? It shouldn't be about me winning or losing as a leader. It shouldn't be about the team winning or losing per se, right? Everything is a negotiation. Okay. If I have to make a policy change, maybe I'm going to push that back and say, hey, we're contemplating this policy change, or I need to make this change, and here is why. What is your feedback on this? Would this work? Would this not? Here's what I'm thinking I'd like to do in order to meet this objective. And my team may come back and say, that's great, but X, Y, and Z may not work the way that you think it is. Okay, great. Tell me more. And then we kind of negotiate and we massage and we fix it together. Why? Because especially when it comes to decision making or changes within how we are doing the job, number one, I need to be able to influence and realign that line of sight of the organization. But when I involve employees in the decision-making process, they are more likely to buy in. I have more influence in their commitment to that change, to that need, than I would had I of just that, here you go, this is what you have to do, like take it or leave it, right? So negotiation and communication is really critical for influence. Also, let's talk about business knowledge. We don't expect you to be perfect or a 100% expert in every aspect, every technicality of the job. You might be, and that might be amazing for you. But again, most leaders are going to have areas where they recognize, hey, I may not be the best person for this, or hey, I haven't experienced that, but another supervisor or my assistant, or heck, one of my entry-level team members may have more knowledge in that area because of their, previous employment, or they just got out of school and haven't learned that yet, whatever it may be. But business knowledge is critical. As a leader, I have to understand my business, but I also have to understand and acknowledge areas where I may not be as competent, and that's okay, right? I have to have a strategic focus. Here's where we're at. Here's where we're headed. Here's how I think we can get there. But constantly keeping a pulse on that strategy, because it's going to have to change. Okay. There has to also be organizational awareness, not just what's going on within my department, my division, but within other departments or divisions, again, because we're relying all on each other. If something is going on within the industry, a regulatory change, a best practice change, a product change, a service change, great. I need to know that, but I also have to be able to communicate that to my team, because that will impact how and why they do their job as well, right? If you are joining an organization as a new leader and it's a completely different industry, that's okay too. Might be a little scary of a place for you to be because there's that learning curve. But a good leader is going to dive head in, feet first, jump, sink or swim over here, and is going to work to learn the industry, because that builds credibility within our team, right? And we have to give that value added perspective. Maybe you're not as familiar with the business or the industry, but maybe you saw similar things or have a different perspective from, healthcare that might be applicable here now in banking, right? In terms of strategy or approach or customer service, whatever it may be. You bring that to your team. You communicate that to your team. You communicate that up to other leaders within your organization, because we all have value added perspective from our experiences, our other careers, and that's critical. There also needs to be a technical proficiency, and I'm going to break some of these things out here, in particular, the 5 basic principles of leadership, which will be an additional slide here in just a moment, but general management skills. Okay. How do you coach? How do you counsel? How do you appropriately discipline somebody where they don't walk away from that corrective action feeling completely, destroyed, right? Management skill set is critical for leadership, right? You also have to have the technical side, the computer side as well. So all of those things are important. So let's talk a little bit about the role of a team leader. In previous years, and previous management styles, if I think back to the 80s, 90s, maybe even early 2000s, there was this push of, I don't want to call it necessarily micromanagement, but there are a lot of people that micromanage. But it was often this culture, this environment of a controller. Hey, I'm a team leader. I'm going to make people do what I want them to do. I'm going to make them do their job. They're going to have to comply, right? And in today's work environment, that approach doesn't necessarily work. Sure, there are times where you have to draw that line in the sand and wear that manager hat. But if we are functioning out of a controller method, we will only get by. We will only get the bare minimum. I call it compliance. They will do what they're supposed to do. They will not go above and beyond, right? Because we are not empowering our folks. We are not serving as that coach, that more flexible, empowered culture. And that is something that the workforce has been demanding. All generations, not just the younger generation, the workforce has been demanding, especially the last, I'm going to even go 7 years, because prior to COVID, the dynamic was changing, right? So Our team members want that coach. They want somebody that they can go to, that they trust, that they respect, that they can say, hey, I'm struggling with this. And that is not going to say, well, suck it up, buttercup, figure it out. That coach is there saying, okay, great. Thanks for sharing that with me. Let's look at it together. What can we modify? What can we adjust? What obstacles can I remove to help best support you? Right? So when we take that relationship approach, when we take that supportive approach, we're gaining commitment. Why? Because my team member that I just spent 30 minutes working through a problem and having appropriate communications and not handing them the solution or telling them what to do on a silver platter is going to gain commitment. Because when they go back to their respective work area, they're going to reflect and say, wow, Jamie really did take the time to support me. She helped me kind of think through it. She helped me, come up with solutions on my own. And that doesn't mean that, we're not going to coach through that and say, well, I hear you. I think that may work, but did you think about this? Employees need that coach. That is only going to grow our organization, better our customers, our clients. It improves the product or the service that we are providing. You can tell when you walk into an organization, the culture as a customer. I can walk in and just sit back and observe and feel the dynamic. So when we have that coaching, that supportive, that committed culture and environment, it's only making us better. It's only improving the quality of the product and the service that we offer to our clients and to our communities. But here's the problem. You can't buy commitment. I can pay them all of the money in the world, but that does not mean that they are going to be motivated and committed to me as a leader, because commitment comes from within. Commitment comes from relationship and getting to know my people. What's important to them? Do they have kids? Are they motivated to work extra hours or overtime or on call or whatever it may be because they promised their kid that they were going to help them with college, right? So if we're not in tune on the outside, that may look like, yeah, they're motivated by money. They're committed to working the extra time, but the motivation is coming from supporting the relationship within their family. Okay. So I want us to think about the best team member that we have. Are they committed and why? And I guarantee you, it all goes back to relationship, right? You cannot buy commitment, but you can get to know your people. That doesn't mean you have to be best friends or cross the relationship line with your people. But I've got to understand where their internal motivation comes from, right? If I don't feel safe and secure, if I have lost my home because it burned down yesterday, that's going to impact my ability to feel safe and secure, which is going to impact my ability to form relationships, which is going to impact my productivity at work, right? So when we get to know our people, you can tie that motivation, you can tie that relationship, those conversations. And I'm not saying you have to be best friends with them, but you've got to get to know them, because once you foster that relationship, the trust, the commitment, they see that you are walking the walk and talking the talk. They see that you are consistent in what you do for one, you do for them all, not just your favorites. They will commit to you. And so, yeah, when you need somebody to stay late, or we just had a crazy large order come in and, oh my gosh, we need to, work some extra overtime to get this taken care of, they're going to raise their hands and say, absolutely, I'm here for you. Let's get it done. Okay. So you can't buy that commitment, but you can certainly foster it. Let's talk about decision making. Let's talk about decision making. Okay. You should be involving your team and decisions that, of course, are appropriate where we can. At minimum, you as a leader should have 51%. Okay. But that team member also needs a percentage, 49%. Maybe your decision minimum is going to be 70% and they're at 30%. But regardless, you've got to involve them in that decision making. They have critical feedback. They're the ones on the front lines in many circumstances doing the job or seeing things that we may not see in our leadership role because we're not there, at the front desk day in and day out dealing with patients or customers, right? So gain their feedback, gain their perspective. Yes, you still have the majority decision making, but they are more apt to buy in and follow through with that decision and that implementation if they are involved. Okay? So we want to make sure that we are demonstrating personal power versus positional power. I said it earlier, title is great, right? But we don't want to be that individual that solely uses that title to exercise positional power, right? We have to gain commitment. We have to share information and request information and communicate in a two-way situation where we are involving them, we're building that trust. We are working and fostering individual relationships, but also supporting individual. And we are making sure that we have quality investment, not just in our people, but in the products and services that we are offering. Because that will make us successful. If we are solely functioning out of compliance, and I'm just saying, I'm your manager, do as I say, I'm commanding that you do it my way only. We're only going to get by. You're going to have high turnover. You're going to have low morale. You're going to have low motivation. Okay. That instills fear and frustration and a lack of commitment within your teams. The positional power culture no longer works in today's work environment. It doesn't, right? Especially with recruitment being as difficult as it is and as expensive as it is. Okay. You got to get into personal power. Employees need to feel empowered to make decisions. You need to feel empowered as a leader to make decisions. Sometimes those decisions are amazing, and sometimes we will fall flat on our face with the decision. That's okay. But you, as well as your team, need to understand that there is no shame in failure. It teaches us something. So if we can take that approach, we can take that supportive approach and that coach approach and say, okay, great, we made this decision. It wasn't necessarily the outcome that we were hoping for or what we expected at all, but what do we learn from it? How do we move forward? What do we do differently the next time? That's fostering the trust. That is your personal power as a leader. So I strongly encourage you to work through that. I mentioned attitudes and opinions or attitudes and behaviors earlier. So as a leader, as a manager, you can never manage successfully whatsoever someone's attitude or opinion. You will spin tires, you will be on the carousel, and you will never get off. Right? The only thing that we can manage and that we can work towards modifying is somebody's behavior. It's what they do. What they think or feel is based on their own internal commitment, motivation, where they're at in their life, whatever is going on. So when I am providing feedback, when I am doing coaching or counseling or discipline or realigning expectations as a leader, I'm solely focused on behavior. Why? Because it keeps it neutral. Did I see it? Did I hear it? Or can I? Right? Let me give you an example. If I'm providing feedback to one of my team members and I say, gosh, Lauren, you consistently have attendance issues. You're coming in late, 10 and 15 minutes late at least 2 or 3 days a week because you just don't care. Clearly, you're not into what we're trying to get accomplished here. And, it's, I don't know if it's because you're young or because of this, but it just seems like your head's not in it and that you don't care about this team. That's if I go to Lauren and have that approach as a leader, her entire response is going to be modified, right? She's likely not going to have a positive response back to something that I impose, my attitudes, my opinions. I think that she's lazy, or I think that, she doesn't care. Well, maybe she really does. Maybe there's something else going on in her life outside of the four walls of our organization that I'm not aware of. Okay? But if I say, "Hey, Lauren, I've noticed that the last couple of weeks you've been coming in 2 days late by about 10 minutes or so. Um, help me understand what's going on. Is there anything I can do to support you?" Okay. Tell me more. Lauren is more likely to want to share with me what's going on. Maybe her dog is sick. Maybe she got a flat tire. Maybe she doesn't have a justification for it. Okay, great. But the facts of the situation were that Lauren was late consistently, right? Those are neutral. Facts are neutral. Me putting my attitude or opinion on it as a leader is either going to be positive or negative, which means I'm also either going to get a positive or a negative response from that conversation. So facts are behaviors, opinions are attitudes. We can only lead and manage behaviors factually. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about my basic principles of leadership. Number one, always focus on the situation, issue, or behavior. You never make it personal. Like I said, some personality styles are going to shut down. Other personality styles are going to shoot right back at you. Okay. Doesn't matter. Focus on the facts. Focus on the behaviors. What did they say? What did they do? Keep it neutral. You always want to maintain the self-confidence and the self-esteem of others. So let's go back to this conversation that I'm having with Lauren, hypothetically on attendance. "Hey, Lauren, when you're here, you are such an involved team member, and I know that the rest of the group really looks to you for support or clarification, and I think that's incredibly valued. However, I have noticed the last couple of weeks you've been coming in late. And that's a little disruptive, especially when, you might be my lead person and we get behind, right? So help me understand what's going on." And then when she tells me what's going on, we go through, a discussion on how we're going to fix it moving forward. Then I end on a positive note. "Lauren, I'm really glad we talked. I have no doubt that we're going to get back on track, and I really appreciate your efforts and everything that you do for the team, specifically in X, Y, and Z." I have maintained her self-esteem in that conversation. Okay. That is a critical aspect of commitment, of leadership, and of relationship. Okay. The second that I go in and I use attitude or an opinion, I have crushed the self-confidence and self-esteem of whoever I'm trying to coach through, right? Don't do it. Maintain constructive relationships with your employees, peers, and managers. Not just the team that you are managing. You have to play well with others within the organization. Again, you may not always agree. That's okay. That's what makes us human and individuals and professionals, right? We can have disagreements. We can have constructive conversations. We can agree to disagree. We can say, "Hey, I see your point. I understand. But I see it differently, and that's okay." But when we're undercutting other leaders within the organization or backbiting or talking poorly about other folks within the organization, that's not reflective of a good leader, right? So maintain those constructive relationships. Number 4, take initiative to make things better. And last but not least, you have to lead by example. I, as a leader, won't ask my team to do anything that I am not willing to do myself. Okay. It may not be my favorite part of the job, but I will do it. Right. So yeah, your team members want to see that you're willing to stand by them, roll up your sleeves and do the exact same thing. Lead by example. If you want certain behaviors demonstrated within your department or within your organization, you need to be demonstrating those behaviors yourself. You can't hold them accountable or provide them feedback about gossiping or, you know, customer service if you just turned around and got caught gossiping about somebody else within the organization. That's not a good leader. So lead by example. Trust me, it's like the domino effect. They will fall in line. Let's talk a little bit about keys to motivation. Lots and lots of positive reinforcement and personalize it. Don't just say thanks. Don't get me wrong, thank you is important, but why are you thanking me? What did I do that you were appreciative of? Okay. Ask for performance. Get to know them. How do they like to be motivated? What is important to them as a person, which drives their motivation? Again, it's tied back to personality. Some people are motivated by task completion. Some people are motivated by goal achievement. Some are motivated by one-on-one recognition versus entire social recognition. So ask for the performance. Have good, clear expectations, right? Use the positive reinforcement. This is going to be a terrible, terrible analogy, but I'm going to give it anyway. Positive reinforcement with children, adults, pets, right? So let's use the example of potty training or teaching a dog to sit, right? If you just got a new puppy and you're teaching the dog to sit and you ask them to sit and they do it, we often are like, oh, yes, here's the cookie. Good job. Good boy. Good girl. Good putty. Whatever it may be. Okay. Again, terrible analogy, but it's appropriate. Your employees deserve that from a leader. When they do something well, acknowledge it. Provide that positive reinforcement, even if it's what they're supposed to be doing already. Why? Because when we give that positive reinforcement, they are more likely to repeat the behaviors. Just like the dog, the next time you ask them to sit, they're going to sit and look at you like, hey, mom, where's my cookie? Where's my piece of cheese? Where's the good boy, the good girl, right? So use the positive reinforcement, make it personalized, build those relationships. Listen to understand your employee's point of view. Again, you don't have to agree with it, but you have to understand. And that goes back to my 2 key phrases. Tell me more and help me understand. If I go to Lauren and I'm like, gosh, Lauren, what were you thinking? She's not really going to be inclined to want to give me her point of view, or she might begrudgingly. Instead of me saying, hey, Lauren, help me understand what happened. Okay. She's going to be less on edge and more apt to share her point of view. Model the behaviors that you want and refuse to accept that poor performance. That goes back to good, clean, clear, set expectations. Okay. And we've got to be able to explain that as a leader. If I say, hey, I expect you to be a team player, well, what does team player mean to you as a leader? And everybody's going to have a different definition. You have to be able to explain those qualities, that characteristic, to align the good expectations. 10 commandments of leadership: always search for opportunities for growth, for development, to learn from your team members as well, or to search for opportunities to share and grow and develop them. Sometimes we got to experiment. We take risks. We learn from it. Okay. That's what a good leader does. We're not going to just stay stuck in, well, we've always done it this way. So, there might be a better way to do it. Great. I mean, obviously, don't take a risk that's going to injure somebody, break a policy or a procedure, or, violate a regulation. But sometimes there are better ways that we can do things, and leaders are constantly looking at that. We talked about future, we talked about vision, making sure they are enrolled in that and they understand their point and their role in that so that we can foster that collaboration, gain that feedback from them that will only strengthen our relationships. Set good examples for your team. And let me clarify this one as well. Do not make an example of an individual on your team. That's not what a leader does. Set good examples. Plan for good progress. Celebrate the successes. So at SESCO, we do a lot of cultural surveys and opinion surveys within organizations nationwide. And within that survey is a category, a statistically valid category related to feedback, right, from managers to employees. And often it can score mediocre, sometimes even low, right? And I say, well, we do, when we dig into those scores through the feedback sessions, they say, gosh, Jamie, we do get feedback from our managers, our leaders, but it's only typically when we've done something wrong, right? So I want you to remember that as a leader. I want you to think about giving them feedback, celebrating the successes. Yes, we're going to have to address things that are not on task or that are behaviors being demonstrated that are not acceptable. There's no way around that, right? But you have to also remember and put a focus on the good. They need that. And that's what a good leader is going to consistently balance, right? Providing that fair, constructive feedback, but also celebrating those successes and recognizing the individual efforts. Hey, Matt, I'm so thankful that you were here at this point in time. I think you dealt with that irate customer so incredibly well. One thing I noticed was that you were able to diffuse the situation, et cetera, and I really appreciate your effort. Okay. Versus me just walking by Matt and saying, hey, Matt, thanks for handling that. Okay. It's more meaningful to my team member when I recognize the individual effort. Let's talk about Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective Supervision. Number 1, communication. We've talked a lot about that. Number 2, gives very specific performance expectations. These should be qualitative and quantitative. Okay. You've got to flesh those out. Look at your job descriptions. Make sure they're qualitative and quantitative. A good leader is going to make as much daily contact with as many employees as they possibly can within their day. Don't sit hiding in your office. Okay. Get out there. Make touch points. How you doing? What can I do for you today? What do you need from me? What is your high and low of the day? Okay. That allows us to loosen the reins. Employees have to feel free to make decisions within their scope of authority, right? But they don't want to be micromanaged. They don't want you standing over their shoulder telling them exactly X, Y, and Z how to do it. Let them have some executive functioning skill sets. Sometimes as a supervisor, we have to laugh. Why? Because life is hard. Work is hard. The days are long at times, and we've got to have a sense of humor, right? We've got to roll with the punches within reason. But more importantly, we have to get that direction and consistency. That is so, so critical. What we do for one, we have to do for them all. They look to us for direction. They look to us to be fair and consistent because when we are, we gain that commitment. I'm also going to be looking for ways to improve and learn from other people. I don't know everything. I learn something new from my team members every single day. Every single day. And I love it. It's one of the best aspects of being a leader within my organization is that I learn something new every day, right? So expectations for leadership function support, obviously, the line operations. We've got to be flexible, right? There has to be flexibility in decisions and approaches and every aspect that we do, because that is going to make our team members more effective, and that's going to enhance the quality. So things that I'm looking for, obviously, in terms of motivation as well, inside and outside motivation, is that I'm being courteous. Even when on rough days that I am not feeling great about myself or my life or whatever it may be, I am still going to say, good morning, good afternoon, how are you? What can I help you with? I am courteous. Okay. I'm also going to demonstrate concern. When I see that behaviors are off or dynamics are off, I'm going to work with that individual and say, hey, what's going on? I'm worried, or I'm concerned about this decision that, we made, and it may not be the best one, but we're going to roll through it together, right? That's giving consideration. My way is not always the best way. Okay. I'm going to consider outside opinions, outside feedback, outside perspectives. And that allows me to show compassion. I think one of the biggest things in leadership for mentorship and reciprocal relationship is just that compassion. We are all human beings. We have things going on in our personal lives that impact our behaviors at work. We may have things going on at work as well. And compassion really goes a long way. It doesn't mean you're justifying it, doesn't mean you are validating per se, but you can be compassionate. You can say, I can understand that could be tough, or I see your point of view, right? Consistency. Yes, we have to have control, self-control, okay? Self-control on, sharing appropriate things, keeping ourselves in check, keeping our emotions in check as a leader. Those things are important. And care about the mission, care about the vision, buy into the line of sight, be passionate about it, because your team will as well. But care about the individuals that are working for you, right? Because we're only as good together so that we can meet those objectives. Okay. So in summary, good leadership skill sets are going to ensure that we are all giving our best. My results as a leader solely depends on my team members' efforts. Okay. I am only as good as the people that are working underneath me and supporting me as well, right? And the most essential leadership skill is always to enhance their self-esteem, right? So with that being said, friendly reminder, facts versus opinions, always focus on those behaviors so that we can discuss performance or expectations, getting everybody back online objectively and factually. And one of the best things that we can do for motivation and morale is to get to know your people, right? What's important to them? What are their personality styles? So that when they are participating in decision making or giving feedback or feel comfortable and trust that they can come to you with those things. That's the most powerful motivation tool that we can do that. Encourage it. Tell them to share with you things, even if it may be contrary to your opinion. That's okay, because they're going to trust that even if it's contrary, that you're going to hear them. Doesn't mean you're going to agree, but that you're going to hear them and they have a voice, right? So a lot to throw at you in a little over an hour, but as we mentioned, this session is recorded. I will make sure that Lauren gives you a copy of the PowerPoint as well. Let's see if we have any questions. Lauren, I can't see oh wait, here. We got the chat here. Let me pull this up. If we have any. I don't see any questions in the chat unless I'm missing something, Lauren.
Me either. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat or Q&A feature, and we'll answer them as they come in.
But overall, as Lauren mentioned, some Some insurance clients have access to SESCO for telephone and email consulting if you're not already a SESCO client. If you have any questions about whether you were enrolled in that program or have access, please feel free to reach out to your individual account manager. And we can connect that way as well. But the corporate office at SESCO is 423-764-4127. My email is listed there below as well. If you have any questions or additional needs, feel free to reach out and I would be more than happy to assist you. With that being said, Lauren, I'll turn that back over to you.
Yeah, if there are no questions, thank you all for joining us today, and I'll be sharing the recording of this webinar and the slides shortly. Thank you and have a great day.